We certainly have been watching what the Taliban is doing. We have noted, and we have noted with great concern, the speed with which they have been moving and the lack of resistance that they have faced.
The stark assessment of the situation in Afghanistan from Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby today. With U.S. troops en route to assist with the embassy evacuation, the question now becomes, will Kabul fall before they make it? Even as the stock market reaches an all-time high, Americans' confidence in the economy drops to its lowest level in a decade. And as prices rise on everything from food to gas to housing, will expiring unemployment benefits force Americans off the sidelines and back to work? A tale of two governors. Kathy Hochul has the top New York job, but for how long? We'll look at her challengers. And will the latest vaccine mandate in California sink Governor Newsom? And if you thought your summer was going badly, murder hornets are back, where they were spotted. The Donlon Report starts right now. Good evening, and thanks for joining us. I'm Rudabeh Shabazi. Joe has the night off. I want to start tonight with a simple question. When you think of Afghanistan, what comes to mind? You probably think of women behind burqas, terrorists, the Taliban, a far-off land where our troops are fighting and dying. You probably think of America's longest war, one that stemmed from the terror attacks that changed and scarred America forever. You may think of bin Laden and his operatives who hid and trained in that country, who planned the mass murder of Americans around the world and radicalized thousands. And when you think of the Taliban today, you probably think of a group of militants who are once again claiming Afghanistan at lightning pace, freeing prisoners to join their army, asserting brutal rule that robs girls of their education and women of their freedom. You probably do not think of the U.S. funneling money and arms into Afghanistan to help the Mujahideen fight our enemy, the communists, when the Soviets invaded in 1979. When you think of the wars that followed September 11th, you may think of Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction that never materialized. You may not think of our ally, Saudi Arabia, where 15 of the 19 terrorists came from, where bin Laden inherited his fortune. You may not think of our ally, Pakistan, where bin Laden hid in plain sight. When you think of Afghanistan, you may not think of the cradle of civilization, where Europe and Asia met along the Silk Road, where history has been passed for 1,000 years through poetry, where the first oil paintings were created. It's a land that's been invaded almost as long as it's existed, by the Persians, the Macedonians, the Arabs, the British, the Soviets, and the Americans. Today, more than 6,000 Americans have died in the war in Afghanistan, according to the Watson Institute at Brown University. Tens of thousands more have been wounded. More than 47,000 Afghan civilians have been killed in the violence, and $2.2 trillion taxpayer dollars have been spent. And now, the soul searching. What have we accomplished, and what are the consequences of leaving? We'll start tonight with Allison Harris, live in Washington, with the latest on the crisis in Afghanistan. And Allison, where do we stand at this hour?
Well, Rudabeh, it's a situation that is changing hour by hour. Right now, tonight, U.S. troops are arriving in Kabul in the frantic rush to get Americans and allies out. The UN Secretary General warning that Afghanistan is spinning out of control. The Pentagon says the bulk of the 3,000 troops that are being sent will be in place by the end of this weekend, and the 3,500 troops going to Kuwait on security standby are now preparing to deploy as well. The Pentagon also saying today that the U.S. has the capacity to airlift thousands of people out of Afghanistan, not yet sharing specific plans about how many additional U.S. aircraft will be traveling to Afghanistan to help with the evacuation. There are 1,400 Americans who are stationed at the embassy there. As of now, the U.S. has not announced plans to close that embassy. Americans in the country are being warned to leave immediately. There are also 18,000 Afghan allies. These are interpreters, people who helped the U.S., who are still waiting for their special immigrant visas to be processed to be able to get out of the country safely, many of them hoping for seats on American planes. The Defense Department press secretary saying today, when he was asked what's going to happen if the Taliban is in control of the country, carrying American weapons, riding around in American Humvees and vehicles on the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. And what I can tell you is our troops who deployed to Afghanistan after 9/11 did what they were sent there to do, which was to prevent Afghanistan from being a safe haven for terrorist attacks upon the homeland. A lot of progress was made in Afghanistan, progress which we obviously don't want to see put at greater risk.
That Pentagon press secretary still speaking with some hope today, saying that no outcome has to be inevitable and that this is a moment for the Afghans to unite and that there is a political solution. Meanwhile, the world is watching the Taliban infiltrating Afghan government buildings, watching them infiltrate police stations. Afghan forces, meanwhile, Afghan forces, we're watching video of them leaving, fleeing these cities that are being captured by the Taliban in armored vehicles. The Pentagon saying that the situation continues to be deeply concerning, but adding that Kabul is not under imminent threat, even as the Taliban are only 30 miles from that capital of Kabul. Rudabeh?
Allison Harris in Washington, D.C. for us. Thanks so much. And for more, I want to welcome now Jason Beardsley. He is the Executive Director of the Association of the U.S. Navy. Welcome. I want to start with the questions I posed at the beginning. This is America's longest war. It came at a tremendous cost. I want to put those questions to you. What have we accomplished, and what are the consequences of leaving?
Well, thank you, first of all, Rudabeh, for having me. It's a pointed question, and the first thing we should recognize is what spokesperson Kirby said, which is our men and women who are on the ground, deployed back-to-back to Afghanistan, did an amazing job. They answered the call when the country asked for it, and they lived up to that duty honorably. Where the real question lies is, what did the political leadership and the military leadership envisage for goals that were on the ground that the American soldier, the American service member, could attain? And because we never heard what those goals were, we can't lay that on the troops. They did their job tremendously. What we have to do is look at the lack of creativity out of Washington, D.C., where for 20 years, we put men and women in harm's way without a real purpose at the end of that. So now we're faced with the consequence that this looks like not as much a loss as much as a long-term disaster. But make no mistakes, people saw this coming for a long time.
So the Taliban has captured now more than a dozen provincial capitals in just the past week. It looks like they'll soon be taking Kabul. They've already taken Kandahar. What does it mean that the Taliban has gained so much ground so quickly? And are we just going to be back where we started?
Yeah, they gained ground quickly because it's a little bit of understanding the tactics on the terrain. These are very rural areas around the provinces in the western and the southern portions of Afghanistan. It's rugged terrain. The cities are not occupied. They're not massive outposts, or we don't have a huge government presence from Afghanistan there. So when you hear that these provinces are falling and the capitals are falling, that is to be expected. These are not massive strategic military goals as much as they are a demonstration of how much the Afghanistan government has not truly unified this country in the last 20 years. You had an amazing opening that describes the long process of how we got here, which is rural terrain, balkanized states, factional people on the ground, and they're separated by far. So Ashraf Ghani, the president of Afghanistan, has a very, very tall task ahead of him. And you hear the spokesperson on the U.S. side indicating what U.S. policy is, which is we're shifting the burdens to the Afghanistan government.
Well, many of the provincial capitals may not be urban centers, but Kandahar and Kabul are very strategically important economically.
Oh, absolutely. They are. And there's no doubt that they will present a challenge to the Taliban. But we cannot expect that the government that has not unified for the last 20 years, we can't expect that the forces that have not stood their ground for the last 20 years will sort of magically stand their ground now. Our soldiers and sailors, service members, Marines, airmen, have come back from Afghanistan for 18, 19, 20 years and told us this story. So the real shame here is who's not listening, and why aren't the political leaders, the military leaders, adapting to the current conditions on the ground, or the previous conditions? That puts us in a bad situation. But again, we have to celebrate what our men and women did because they lived honorably and they'll do it again. What we really have to ask is for clarity and decision-making that are clear for the military to achieve a real objective.
Of course, no one's taking anything away from the troops here. We're just asking, really important questions in terms of foreign policy. So this is the so-called forever war, right? It's plagued 4 different administrations, both Democrat and Republican. In your view, was there a turning point here?
I think there was a turning point, or maybe there were many, right, on the ground when we made a decision to clear objectives and to take terrain back in the early days. We did that well. The turning point might be when we ceded that objective, the military tactics on the ground, to a larger purpose that was a little bit vague and aimless, which is something like nation building or settling the region. We never really got to that because the military doesn't do that. The military is there to really bring violence to the enemy and create a victory situation. It's then belonged to the State Department and others to kind of wrangle down how does a government stand up. That's nothing we were ever going to see the military do. So every time we saw once there were tactical successes or victories, what they should have been followed by was a declaration. And then if we wanted to hold ground there to police or to do something else, the leadership, the presidents, the generals should have been clear about that. So we really have to look to them. Congress has been operating under the authorized use of military force, the AUMF, that was written back in 2001. So we're still operating off old documents. We need to hold congressmen accountable. We need to hold our presidents accountable.
All right, Jason Beardsley, we appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The U.S. is now working to help get American allies out of Afghanistan. Those allies include interpreters who helped the Americans communicate with their Afghan partners. Joining us now is Amanullah Siddiqui. He was an interpreter in Afghanistan. He is now the program manager with No One Left Behind. That's a nonprofit that works to help interpreters and other wartime allies. Mr. Siddiqui, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you were an interpreter yourself. What went into the decision to help the U.S. at such great risk to yourself and your family? And do you think the U.S. government will keep its promise to all of those they made promises to in Afghanistan who agreed to help in the effort?
Well, at some points, yes, they kept their promise, but for most of the time, no. They are still trying to keep the promise, but they haven't been able to. As you all know, the fear of Taliban retaliation is being felt intensely across the country, while the U.S. will withdraw its forces completely by September and will leave thousands of Afghans behind. We know that there are some people who are coming, and more than 10,000 applicants still waiting for their visas. We don't know, what will happen to them.
And everyone under the age of 20, it's really mind-blowing when you think of it. Everyone in Afghanistan under the age of 20 has only known war. It's obviously a very different language, a different culture here. When they come to the U.S., what are the biggest obstacles they face in terms of getting assimilated, finding work, getting into the education system, etc.? What was your experience like, for example?
Yes, high expectations first, cultural shock for those under the age of 20. The environment, the job search, the transportation is totally different here, and many more. And so what I would, suggest them get out of their comfort zone and work and make connections. Then they will be able to get help and to get used to all these.
And you mentioned about 2,500 Afghan evacuees are set to arrive in this first wave. Roughly 20,000 are seeking visas by the September 11th withdrawal deadline. That does not seem likely to happen. Correct me if I'm wrong. What happens to those left behind, and what happens to the family members of those who do make it here?
So, yes, 2,500 applicants are here, and they said that more than 2,500 more will be by the end of August. And the rest who are waiting for their visas, they will be relocating to the third countries, one of the U.S. territories. But we still don't know. Most of the people, they keep calling us, they emailing us and ask for the status of their visas. And all these threats and violence enforced upon our allies back in Afghanistan will document it. And at least we have, 300 interpreters have been killed since 2016. And that number grew up by the time.
Amanullah Siddiqui, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Today, the Department of Homeland Security issued a terrorism threat warning, citing a, quote, diverse and challenging threat environment ahead of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. The bulletin warns that foreign terrorists are using online forums to spread violent extremist narratives and promote violent activity. It goes on to warn that the efforts are exacerbated by the pandemic and the closures and restrictions that come with public safety measures. The stock market hits a new all-time high today. Its 48th new high this year, a record. But with prices rising on everything from food to gas to housing, can the post-pandemic economy recovery continue? And murder hornets are back. Are the giant bee-killing superbugs buzzing around your state? Stick around to find out. And don't forget to follow us on social media at the Donlon Report on Twitter. The U.S. economy appears to be bouncing back from the past year's coronavirus shutdowns. It was a monster week on Wall Street, with the Dow and the S&P 500 hitting their 48th record high of the year today. But despite those gains, many businesses say they're having trouble filling openings. Why aren't employees returning to work? Fear of getting COVID-19 to a lack of adequate child care among the many reasons. Data released from the Labor Department this week shows American employers posted a record 10.1 million job openings in June. Maybe some are making higher pay with the enhanced unemployment benefits, which are set to expire for millions of Americans on perhaps appropriately Labor Day. Joining us to discuss further is economist and University of Maryland professor Peter Maurici. Good to have you this evening. The number of Americans filing unemployment claims fell again last week. This as pandemic unemployment benefits are set to end next month. What do you expect to see when this happens?
Well, when the benefits end, I expect to see more people around the second week of September coming out and looking for jobs. This will ease labor shortages, but it won't make them go away. We have over 10 million job openings, and anywhere we can estimate it, there are maybe 7 million people that need a job. That were working before. And of that 7 million, some of them have probably left the labor market for good. They've retired or something like that. So the labor shortages aren't going to go away.
So what do you expect the job market to be like? We've seen a lot of people who have chosen not to return to their low-paying jobs, or maybe they're pickier about when and where they return to work. Has COVID just changed the employment pool forever? And what can businesses actually do to get employees back to work?
Well, there's a lot of moving parts. For one thing, the kind of employees that employers want has changed. Because of Zooming and all this business, what people buy has changed, and so therefore we're going to have fewer brick and mortar stores. We're going to have fewer restaurants. So a lot of those public-facing, $10, $15 an hour jobs with tips are not going to come back. That's the first thing. The second thing is a lot of people are going to lose their unemployment benefits, but this child care, tax credit, or this child tax credit that is going through. Is going to provide people with children monthly payments. Some mothers are simply going to choose to stay home because it's going to be too expensive to go to work. So my feeling is that we're not going to see all the people in the job market that we did before. And because the skill set that businesses require has changed, we're going to continue to have labor shortages. The reality is we're pretty close to full employment right now in terms of wage pressures and things of that nature.
Consumer sentiment is at its lowest level in a decade. That was the marker today. What do you make of that?
Inflation. One of the things that really kills consumer sentiment is inflation, but especially being told there's nothing to worry about and then finding out is indeed something a great deal to worry about. For how many months now has Chairman Powell and President Biden's people been telling us, oh, this is transitory? These inflationary pressures are real and they will persist. A lot of the fortuitous circumstances we had in the last decade will not reemerge again. Stuff from abroad is going to be more expensive, but more importantly, the supply chain is just too taut. We've gotten all we can out of globalization and cutting wages and so forth like that. Now we're going to have to become a smarter economy, and that's unsettling to people.
Housing prices at record highs. Will we see interest rates go up? And do you think this housing bubble is going to burst anytime soon?
Well, will the president get his $3.5 trillion package of social programs? If he does, then he's going to have to borrow a lot of money to do it. And then the Fed will have a choice. It can print money to enable that, and so the borrowing rate stays low, or interest rates go up. If it prints money, we'll have more inflation. If it doesn't, we will have higher interest rates, and higher interest rates will slow the housing market. Remember, when people look at, especially people in their first and second homes, when they go in, the realtor lays out for them not just the price of the house, but their monthly payments. And their monthly payments are very contingent on the rate of interest. My feeling is Joe Biden's social programs are going to price a lot of young people out of the housing market simply by putting so much upward pressure on interest rates or by creating a lot of inflation.
One more thing quickly before I let you go. The S&P 500 and the Dow now at all-time highs. What do you make of that?
Well, people are making money. The corporations are doing well. The people that are working are doing well. It's the upper leg of the K-shaped economy, and I expect that to continue. American companies have learned to become quite adaptable. Even when inflation, they can adjust. They can change their financial strategies and so forth to continue to make profits. Last April, I predicted, in Newsmax and in Market Watch, in the Washington Times, all places where I have columns, that we would have a summer rally. And we are indeed having that summer rally because corporate profits are so strong, even adjusting for the base effects.
All right, Peter Maurici, thank you very much.
Take care. It's nice to be with you.
You too. A tale of two governors. Kathy Hochul has the top New York job, but for how long? We'll look at her challengers, and will the latest vaccine mandate in California sink Governor Newsom? Also, find out what the former governor had to say about people refusing to wear masks. It's a tale of two governors, one in California and one in New York. Gavin Newsom is facing a recall in the Golden State, while Andrew Cuomo just resigned from his office following that scathing report from the Attorney General. We'll get to Newsom shortly, but for now, let's talk Cuomo's replacement, Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. She'll be sworn in less than 2 weeks. Joining me now, a prominent voice in the state, Jay Oliver, host of LI News Radio out of Long Island, New York. Jay, thanks for being here. Kathy Hochul, inheriting a bit of a mess, I think it's fair to say, an allegedly toxic workplace, COVID, the challenges of being a leader who wasn't actually elected, transportation, the eviction situation, the list goes on. What do you think her priorities are going to be?
Well, great to be with you this evening. I think first and foremost, she has to find a way to basically get the trust back into this office. And first and foremost on her plate will be the Delta variant right now. It's surging. We know that as far as New York and Long Island, throughout parts of the state. We know that most of these new cases involve just that. So she's going to have to find a way and somehow get the trust, get it out there regarding the vaccinations, and figure out a way to really connect right now with New Yorkers, because right now residents are bruised and battered. And they're feeling somewhat empty as far as where to go. Where do you find that leadership right now? Hochul's going to have to find that way. She's been out there in and around the state, crisscrossing the state. She's been ribbon cutting. She's been at different types of festivals and whatnot throughout. Now it's about stepping up her game, and the pressure will be on in the next couple of months.
And it appears she'll likely be running at the same time she's governing. Does Letitia James run? De Blasio? Who else do you think might come out of the woodwork here?
Well, based on what happened this past week, everybody, and I mean everybody. Basically you have your GOP pretty much set as far as Congressman Lee Zeldin. You also have Rob Astorini, and you will have America's mayor, the former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani's son, and Andrew. But then on the Democratic side of things, that's where it becomes a circus. You have the likes of a Tom DiNapoli, the state controller. You have the likes of a congressman, I believe, in Tom Suozzi. They'll see an opportunity here. You will also have the star player of the past week, and that is the Attorney General, in Letitia James. Right now, she's on top of the mountain. So in essence, you could make the guesstimation that she will be a leading contender. Now, other players, sidebars, people that we might not think of. The two county executives of where I am, Nassau and Suffolk County, that being Laura Curran and Steve Malone. Long shots. Why? Because a county executive has never become the governor of this state. And don't rule out a Kirsten Gillibrand, and don't rule out, believe it or not, AOC. That's right. The AOC effect could come into play as far as a gubernatorial run, even though she has sights set 2022 as far as Chuck Schumer. Don't rule out the AOC effect here for Albany.
Well, I could talk to you for days about what's going to happen. We look forward to following the developments. Jay Oliver, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure to be with you tonight. Thank you.
And now we want to move on to another governor on the opposite coast in California, where Gavin Newsom is facing a recall election a month from tomorrow. In an interview with the Sacramento Bee last week, it appeared the recall effort might be getting to him.
Everybody outside this state is bitching about this state because of our success. I know I'm a little pointed today, but I've been taking a lot from a few folks for a lot of months. So it's nice to be able to express myself too.
Joining me now, California-based radio host Mo Kelly. Mo, great to be with you. To be fair, the governor is under a lot of pressure right now. Rising COVID cases, wildfires raging across the state, and impending recall. Is it fair to say he may be feeling the pressure, reaching a breaking point?
It's fair to say, because he's been dealing with a lot of these issues for quite some time. Just if you were to just have a governor deal with the fires that we're dealing with here in the state, that's a lot for any governor to handle. And then you throw in COVID and the fires, and then you throw in all the other issues such as homelessness. This is a governor which has had a lot to deal with, and not to give him any type of excuse. I'm just saying, yes, if he looks haggard in nature, it's justifiable in that sense. But he has been acknowledging more and more that this recall is real and a real threat to him staying in office.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that, because this first seemed like a pipe dream, right? But now it's actually underway. 46 candidates in play, including Caitlyn Jenner, Larry Elder, John Cox. Recent polling from Survey USA shows as much as 51% of likely voters would vote yes to recall Newsom in what is considered a very blue state. How does this play out in your view?
Well, it's just a matter of whether the Democrats stay home or not. If they feel that Gavin Newsom has it in the bag and they stay home, then you leave the door open for someone like Larry Elder to sneak in. Give some people some history. Back in 2018, Gavin Newsom won with 62% of the vote over John Cox, who's also one of the people who's running against him. So he had a tremendous win, and also win at his back. But since that time, that number has dissipated. If Democrats turn out, it should not be close. But I don't believe that there are enough disaffected Democrats to go over to the other side. So it's just a function of whether Democrats stay home and assume that Governor Gavin Newsom is going to remain in office. If they make that assumption, then anything can happen.
Because it's California, I want to play some sound from a familiar former California governor and his take on wearing masks.
Screw your freedom, because with freedom comes obligations and responsibilities. Yeah, you have the freedom to wear no mask, but you know something? You're a schmuck for not wearing a mask.
That, of course, was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Is this about freedom, or is this about responsibility to your fellow Americans?
Well, I would like to think that it's about the health of our fellow Americans, that it's a health issue and there's an economic component to it, but it's not a political issue. And unfortunately, it has been highly politicized, and people do view this through a political lens. And the irony of Arnold Schwarzenegger making that statement is he was the one who replaced Gray Davis back in 2003 in the last successful recall election. So people are very highly charged along political lines regarding this issue. But if you look at the numbers, you have to know that this probably will be very different than last year. We did not have a real cold and flu season. We did not have students in classrooms last year. We're going to have to deal with both of that coming up in the next day or two. So there's a lot of unknown going forward, and the politics will not be able to keep up with the health component of it.
All right, Mo Kelly, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate having you.
Thank you.
We're following breaking news right now in New Mexico. A middle school student shot and killed outside the school this afternoon. Jamie Seymour from our Albuquerque station KRQE is there live. And Jamie, what's happening right now?
It's still an active situation, as you can see right behind me, and this is about 5 hours after the fact. Police say the shooting happened around 12:45 this afternoon here Mountain Time in Albuquerque, and they're calling it an isolated shooting between two students, both of those 13-year-old boys. Unfortunately, one of those students did die at the hospital. The other 13-year-old is in custody, and police are not releasing their identities just yet. But what we did get an update from police is that an officer with the school district was a big part of talking the shooter down and de-escalating the situation after the fact. We heard from students and parents immediately after. I mean, there were already parents lined up all down the block of this school near downtown Albuquerque, waiting to pick up their students, families coming together, hugging, crying. It's been an emotional, intense afternoon here. And we're trying to get an update from police, but they say they're looking into a possible school fight earlier this week that may have been escalated with threats. They're looking to confirm if that situation is related to these students. They're also looking to find out how this 13-year-old student got a gun. And we don't know if he was already in the school, if he showed up after. But this was only the third day of school here in Albuquerque, and parents we spoke to say it's already shocked that this even happened, and yet it happened so soon into the school year.
All right, Jamie, thank you for that live report. The masking debate continues in schools throughout the country. I'll speak with one fiery parent taking the masking fight to the schools. And murder hornets are back. The giant bee killing insects buzzing around. Is it in your state? Some tragic news out of Broward County, Florida. 2 teachers and 1 teacher's aide passed away after contracting COVID-19, all within just 24 hours. Joining me now with more is News Nation's Brian Enton. So, Brian, Governor DeSantis says schools cannot require masks, but districts like Broward, where you are going to require them anyway. How is this going to play out?
Yeah, you mentioned those teacher deaths. First of all, it really is tragic, Rudabeh. School here starts on Wednesday, and now the district really in a state of grieving. 2 teachers and a teacher's assistant all dying within 24 hours. We're told that they were all women in their 40s and that none of them were vaccinated. The timing is interesting because where we are, Broward County, Florida, this is sort of the epicenter of this mask debate. You mentioned it. Governor DeSantis has said there will not be any mask mandates in Florida. He passed a law that outlaws mask mandates, but the Broward County School Board actually went against the governor and passed a mandate. We spoke with teachers today. They said in the past, many of them were fans of Governor DeSantis. He's given them raises and bonuses since he took office, but right now, many of them are not very happy with the governor.
He's done some wonderful things to promote the teacher and the educator, and he's taken so many steps backward to act like that we're now the enemy because we want to be safe in our schools and we want our students safe in our schools.
So many of the teachers that we've spoken to this week in districts throughout Florida say they are so excited to be back. They've been looking forward to getting back in the classroom, but of course apprehensive with this mask debate going on, and also nervous because of the situation with COVID here in Florida. Rudabeh?
Brian Enton in South Florida for us. Thank you. And I want to head now to nearby Miami-Dade County, a neighboring county, and a mother, Francella Guido Chacon. Her kids attend Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Ms. Chacon, welcome. You live in Florida. Obviously, we just heard Brian's report. Governor DeSantis has threatened to withhold funding from schools if they put mask mandates in place. What is it like to navigate this school system in Florida, which is now considered the COVID epicenter?
Well, it's been a confusing and very frustrating time for a lot of parents. The Miami-Dade County School Board is not making a final decision on mask mandate until days before the start of school. So it's leaving a lot of parents flustered and trapped, really, because the deadline for virtual is the day before the vote. So what are we to do? If we enroll in virtual, we have to disenroll from our chosen school, and there's no way back. So we feel trapped and we're very frustrated and upset.
So you've now organized with other parents. What are you doing?
So I got tired of seeing the many of the other side And what I needed to see was more of us, more concerned parents that I know I represent so many of, tens of thousands. And I started a petition. And I thought I was only going to get like 500 signatures. And we're well over 10,000. So as you can see, I represent a lot of parents with the same concern that we need mask mandate. We do not believe in the opt-out because, as you can see, just one child unmasked in a classroom can spread it to the whole class. And so we're concerned that that would be part of it. We're concerned that the school board will not vote in favor of masks. And this could all be predictable, and could all be prevented.
So I imagine this has been a pretty contentious experience for you.
To say the least, yes.
You understand the other arguments, the counter arguments that masking in school stunts children's developments. They need to be able to see people's faces, that parents should have the choice about whether their kids are masked or not. What's your response to all of those arguments?
Well, nobody likes to wear a mask, including myself. However, I'd rather send my child to school with a mask than have to send them to the hospital. Now that inhibits learning.
And, I have a lot of people in Florida. I used to work there. Almost everyone I know knows someone or is related to someone who has been affected by COVID in some way. Many people have died. Do you personally know anyone who's died or been gravely ill with COVID? And if so, how has that shaped your perspective?
I do have family members, and I know a lot of friends, unfortunately, that have already contracted COVID. Thankfully, no deaths in my family. However, I do know that there are many cases, worse cases than myself. So I have had my in-laws pass away indirectly from COVID, because not only COVID hits you, but there's other mental illnesses that affect the family. So they passed away indirectly from COVID because they were locked inside their house and their routine got broken.
Before I let you go, what if you don't win this battle?
If we don't win this battle, well, we'll have to continue our fight. We'll have to continue rallying and demonstrating that there's a lot more parents in favor of a mask mandate, vaccines, and virtual school, with temporary virtual school, with the option to come back to our chosen schools.
All right.
So we'll continue the fight.
It's a lot to navigate. Ms. Chacon, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
The nation's largest teachers union, the American Federation of Teachers, is backing vaccine mandates for school workers. News Nation's Leland Vitter spoke to the union's leader, Randy Weingarten, about the matter last night.
We want vaccines for all kids. We know that kids 12 and under can't get them yet, so that's why we need masks.
Joining me now is an author and teacher himself, Jeremy Adams. Good to see you. So if I understand this correctly, you do think it's a good idea for teachers to be vaccinated or tested regularly. What is your stance on masking in schools?
Well, I think there's no question that when you look at our situation today, 99% of all deaths in the country are from people who are unvaccinated. 97% of all hospitalizations are people who are unvaccinated. And so it makes sense that, when you have public employees and you have a union that wants, kids to get back to normal, they want teachers to get back to normal, this position doesn't surprise me at all. Now, as far as masks go for the kids, I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a scientist. I am not here to tell you what the science supports. I will tell you, however, that it is really important, I think, after 17 months of distance learning, of people wearing masks, of people not being able to learn in a traditional way, it's important to get back to normal. I start my school again next week. It's going to be my 23rd year teaching, and I usually teach high school seniors. And it's really weird to think that the only kids on my campus next week who've had a normal year of high school are the seniors. Everybody else has had to go through an altered kind of ecosystem for learning. So, we really need to get the kids back. That's why I'm very supportive of trying to get everybody vaccinated. And so that's where I stand on it.
It is interesting to think about, kind of shocking to think about, that this is year 3, school year 3, that the pandemic is affecting American students. How has the pandemic changed American education? And do you think that it's changed it forever?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it's interesting that the book I just wrote, Hollowed Out, deals with a lot of the problems that our young people were having before the pandemic. You know, 9 to 10 hours a day our kids were spending on their devices. And what does that mean? That means that a lot of the behaviors that give life its meaning and its purpose and kind of give us a sense of a wonderful childhood, you know, dating, reading, going to the movies, going to football games, they weren't doing these things before the pandemic. And now, after 16 or 17 months, a lot of our young people have lived lives in isolation. They've been looking at pixelated screens all day. And it's kind of interesting. You know, I taught summer school, and don't ask me why, but it was interesting because these were kids who had not been in the classroom for a long time. And they had a lot of trouble engaging. You know, really the value, I'd like to tell you that the value of my civics class is that everybody's going to remember what Federalist Paper number 10 is in 20 years. But really, the value of education is the socialization. It's getting up every day. It's getting there on time. It's taking notes. It's being around people you don't like. It's studying hard for an exam. It's doing all the things that young adulthood requires of us so that when we get older, we can go on and live, you know, good lives and chase our dreams and reach high. That's the American spirit. And yet, I think a lot of kids have fallen into this habit of learning behind an anonymous screen where they admit that they've been texting all day. They've been watching Netflix. They've been turning in work late because they are allowed to. They look at their notes when they're taking tests. So, you know, I'm passionate that we need to get back to a normal situation, which is why I believe that vaccines are the best way to do it. Now, of course, I do also, as a civics teacher, I believe in protecting the rights of minorities. So if people have a medical reason, I'm glad that they can be tested instead. If people have a moral reason, they can be tested instead.
All right, Jeremy Adams, we appreciate having you. We respect you all the more for volunteering to teach summer school. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Murder hornets are back. Are these giant bee-killing insects buzzing around your state? Find out next. Now for the story everyone's been buzzing about. There's been a murder hornet. If the pandemic, wildfires, and historically hot temperatures weren't enough, the Pacific Northwest can now officially start worrying about murder hornets. A live murder hornet was photographed in Washington state this week, attacking a wasp nest. Murder hornets are actually a serious danger to the ecosystem. That's because while the Asian giant hornet will eat any insect, a few murder hornets will target and massacre an entire hive in just a matter of hours. The world's largest hornets live up to their names, killing dozens of people in Japan and China every year. The Pacific Northwest stung by another deadly and elusive predator. And that's going to do it for us. The Donlon Report. I'm Rudabe Shabazi. On Balance with Leland Bittert is next.